Hey creative friends, welcome to my channel, and here we are. I'm in my pantry, and the reason I'm in my pantry is because I'm reorganizing it. You know, I do that about twice a year. I come sometime in the winter around the holidays, and then sometime in the summer, midsummer sort of, and I purge my pantry. I go through it, and I realized I have so much in my pantry, which is awesome, but I also have a freezer. I also have my cupboards. I also have my refrigerator, and I call those the four fingers of food preservation. That's my thing. But the reason is I do all the mixes because those are my pantry kind of things, and I'm loving those. But if I just continued to constantly can, my shelves would get to the point where there's more than I can use. And quite frankly, there's some things here that have been here a long time and need to be used, but I just never seem to pull them out to use them. And I know that happens to a lot of people. But I also love my freezer. And so in my upcoming videos for the mixes, I've got about 4 things I think I like to have, these mixes that are pre-done, but they're frozen. So why would I switch a little bit and start freezing more than I'm canning? And this is how your pantry changes. It changes all the time, and it can change with different situations. Like this kind of pantry that you have where it's super, super full and you've got lots of family and stuff that you're feeding, great. But then maybe your life changes, like Brian and I, it's just the 2 of us now. So I do like the pantry cooking for 2. But I do have, let me just explain what I think of as the 4 fingers of food preservation. Okay. Now I have a lot of the Thrive, let me grab one, hang on. Okay. Like the Thrive freeze-dried foods. I was a Thrive consultant. This wasn't a very good one. But Lisa and Linda, they're Thrive people. And this stuff is for like your really, really long-term storage. So I have a bookcase and I have a bunch of these on there. So I have that. That's like my long-term storage. This in here, and I have, it's a mess, but I'll show you. So over here are all my proteins. This is my proteins wall. And quite frankly, if I had limited space, and that's another thing, how your pantry works with super limited space, or if you have a whole bunch of stuff. I know someone who has a pantry that is the entire length of her house. She has a triple wide, and her pantry is like one whole side, like there's a deck out there that's all closed in. Huge. She can do that. There's people that live in little apartments, and they can't have like an extra bedroom like I use, an extra bedroom with shelves filled with canned goods. So this is my proteins wall, and quite frankly, if I was limited, what would I can? I would can my proteins because I like having the meats, I like having the beans, and I would also do all my tomato products because I like having those. Those are like the 3 main staples of my canning. However, I will show you. In the center, I have like store-bought stuff, and then over there, you don't have very good light, but this is all pickles, fruits, syrups, jams, and jellies, and things like that. And you can see how there's a lot of those because we kind of cut back on eating sugars. And so, let me situate you a little better. There you go. So I'm not using those as often, so I need to get doing that. I need to start either giving them to people or starting to focus on using some of these off the shelf. So I do love having my super long-term storage, my freeze-dried foods, my long-term storage, which, oh, I forgot. I got to get some of these out. These are the, oh my gosh, cowboy candy, so good. Anyway, so that's there. But I need to start using that. And this is what I call my long-term storage. And I love it because I have my beefs and my chickens and my porks and all those kind of things. So I have my super long-term and then my long-term. But if you're a person who doesn't have this kind of room, what else can you do? Well, I'm going to show you a little freezer that I got. It's tiny because it's really cute. But I like freezers too. And people say, oh, but what if your power goes out? Well, there's prevention measures that you can take for that. We'll go in and visit my chest freezer a little bit. But I'm starting to do like easier meals that I can just have cut, ready, prepared in the freezer, kind of like freezer meals. But these are actual mixes from the Mix-It books, and they're really good. And they have a bunch of recipes that go with them too. So I kind of like making one mix instead of making a freezer meal that is that freezer meal, to make a mix that then will make a bunch of different freezer meals, because that way I'm making one thing that actually can change into several things. So that's the kind of thing I focus on my freezer. Freezers are also another thing super good about if you buy in bulk. So you can buy in bulk. I'll show you my chocolate chips and nuts. I always get those at like Costco, and I break them down into 1 cup increments, and I vacuum seal them and put them in the freezer. I'll show you a couple of my safety measures for my freezer, but that's going to be my freezer. So that is my next kind of longer term storage. I've got super long term, and then kind of medium long term storage, and that would be my freezer. However, the things that say, oh, you know, this roast will be good, eat it within 3 months in the freezer. When you put something in a freezer, it's like in suspended animation. It's not going anywhere. It's not doing anything. If it does get a little freezer burn, just cut that off. It doesn't mean the product is ruined. So things can be in your freezer much longer than general. And if you look at the FDA guidelines, your canned goods are the same thing. They're good basically as long as they're stored properly and the seals are good. And I did a whole video on that a long time ago, but you can check it out. So I don't really worry about things getting too old. They will lose their quality, but as long as the jar is in good shape and it's looking good and there's no funkiness in there, this is good for a really long time, especially if it's in a glass jar, and especially if things are packaged properly in your freezer. Vacuum seal them, and I did that video for that WeVac chamber vacuum sealer. It's like mind-blowingly good. So I know that my food in my freezer are good. So there you have long term, medium long term, and then in your kitchen, you've got your pantry. This is where I store all my, mixes, things like that I can grab and cook. And my freezer and my refrigerator. That's like your short-term storage, your cheese, your milk, your dairy products that you need to use now. The difference between a real freezer and the freezer on your refrigerator is that freezers on your refrigerator are made to be frost-free, which means they will kind of be frozen and then they'll kind of warm up a little, and then they'll refreeze. So they maintain a temperature, but because it kind of thaws a little and then refreezes so that it doesn't get crystal buildup on the walls, it creates crystal buildup in your stuff. And that means, like, when you've ever got ice cream and it's been in your refrigerator freezer for a long time, like, who has ice cream a long time? But it happens. Or like your peas, like you pull your ice cream out and it's like ice crystals on the top. Or like you take peas out or frozen vegetables and they're like a clump. That's because they've been in there long enough to get it to the point where it just thaws enough for the frost to come off and then refreeze. And then the frost come off and then refreeze. And that's how you get those buildups. So your refrigerator freezer is not intended for really, really, really long-term storage. So it is things like, well, ice, clearly. Things like you're going to use, like what I will do is plan out my weeks, and I will go and I'll grab something that I'm going to make this week and I'll pop it in that freezer just because it's in my kitchen. I'm downstairs here and I have a freezer outside and I have a freezer in my utility room. And so it's just handier in there, but I don't use it for long-term storage. I will grind wheat and put my wheat in there because I'm going to use that to make breads and things like that. So that's what I use that for. So having said all of that, I'm going to take you in and show you a couple of the tips that I have for my chest freezer and talk about chest freezers versus upright freezers. Okay, here I am. I'm in my utility room, and this is where I have my chest freezer. I like this one downstairs. I like it here. And this just lives here. It has for years and years. So I have that, and then outside in our carport, I have an upright freezer. I prefer chest freezers over upright freezers. Why? Because when you have something cold, and when you open this, the cold is heavy, right? Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it just sits down there. The cold air stays in it. Whereas when you open a chest freezer, if you've ever stand there barefoot and you open your chest freezer, whoosh, you can feel the cold air just kind of come out of it. So it has to reheat, rewarm, or recool that warm air that's gotten in there. This doesn't have to work as hard. So I always keep my freezer locked. Why? Not because I think anyone's going to come in here and steal my food. It's like Brian even has no clue what's in here. Most of the time my family has no clue what's in here. But because that way I ensure that the lid is down tight. So that's why I keep it frozen. Now I want you to move up here, and I'm going to show you another thing. Hang on, let me see if I can tilt you down. See this thing right here? This thing is, we lose power, okay? And if you lose power, A chest freezer is good because the cold air stays and the food is frozen, so it keeps everything a lot cooler. So what this is this, I'll show you a little bit more about it. This is just a freezer alarm. So right now it is, I just had it open, so it's 0.2 Fahrenheit. It's not even quite to 0. It's below 0. And the ambient temperature, the temperature in the room is 65. So I keep that there. Now we had our septic replaced and we had to have trees removed, and then there was one tree that the power line went through, so they had to come and drop the power line. And we were about 24 hours without electricity. And did I worry? Well, it took about 18 hours before this started beeping, and it started beeping when this got up to 16 degrees. So it was still frozen, but it was a good idea to have that on the freezer, and I'll show you how that works. So let's just open up the old freezer. And this lid, this is an older freezer. I have a bungee right here that I hook here so that I can see in my freezer. So I hook this bungee to hold the lid up. There you go. And the light doesn't work anymore either, but the freezer's awesome. So the way I do this is the little cord off the little alarm, and basically it just comes through here and it dangles down inside. See, there's a little suction cup, but it doesn't stay stuck on the side where the frost is, so that dangles. I also, as a preventive measure, I have a little freezer gauge in there, and see, that's below 0, which is what this says. So some tips. I like to cook. I love to cook, but I'm only cooking for 2 people. So like right here, if you package things properly, you can do great things. So right here, I made a pumpkin pie. I sliced it, and then I froze the slices. Then I brought them up, like I laid it on a cookie sheet, right? I sliced them and slid them out on silicone and set it down in there. And then I brought them up, and I individually wrapped the pieces of pumpkin pie. There were 8 pieces. There's 3 left. So that works great. So I have those there. Let me get this Ziploc. And also, if you go to your restaurant supply stores, you can get Ziploc bags in 2 and 2.5 gallon size. My freezer smells like onions right now because I just took a whole big cookie sheet where I chopped 4 onions, chopped them up, put them on parchment paper, froze them, and then I put them in a big bag. So I have freshly chopped, basically, onions. Big bags of blueberries, look at that. And then I made the cookie mixes. So you see how I'm a bag fan? This literally has ginger snap and peanut butter cookies in them. And I put those in individual bags with the instructions on how to bake them in the bag. So when I come and I'm looking for something, I only have to grab these bags. So that's kind of cool. These are all bones for broth. That's where I toss my bones for broth. I don't know why I think the pumpkin pie got moved there when I was putting some of the other things in there. I've got bacon. I buy it in bulk. And then I come and I vacuum seal it. And I put about 12 pieces per pack. I put on the outside of my bag what's in there. This is how you're not going to go, what's in my freezer? I don't even know. But, so there's that. Now down inside here, sorry if the noise is weird, I have little, oops, hang on. There is down there, I don't know if you can see, I have bins. And in each bin will be pork or chicken or something like that. So I have that. This is such an old freezer. I had this freezer for like 20 years. And then here's what I was talking about also. So over here, here's some blackberries. It's blackberry time again, so I need to use those. But what I do is I buy things in bulk. And here's a cup of almonds. I know that's a cup because that's the last one. I have walnuts, 1 cup bags. So each one of these bags is 1 cup of almonds. I do the same thing with my chocolate chips. So there's pecans, there's almonds. There's another almond. I'm going to take the whole bag upstairs. And then 1 cup increments of chocolate chips. So I can buy things in bulk, even though it's only for me and Brian, just the 2 of us. But I can buy it in bulk, save money, and then put it in my freezer. And a lot of people prefer the freezer for certain things over canning because the consistency is different. Things are a little bit different in the freezer. So let me tilt you up now. So anyway, I love having a freezer, and right now I find myself baking and cooking more and putting it in the freezer. than canning, because you saw my shelves. I need to rotate those out, and the more I put, the more I'm going to have to work on. So I like having my freezer. So that's that. That's pretty much it. My outside freezer is really where I have bagged frozen vegetables and things, because it's outside and it's a lot older. I don't put high value things. Like in here is where all my meats are, because I can hear this alarm go off if I need to. It's right downstairs. It's protected from the elements. Whereas the one outside, you know, it gets cold, it gets humid and stuff. So the things in there are not that important. Now, another thing is, if you have a freezer, they run more efficiently the fuller they are. So if you have a freezer that you're just starting to build on, if you put the things around the outside where the cold is, it will freeze those things. Those things become more cold. But if you have areas, you can take crushed up newspaper and put in there. You can take milk jugs or jugs, water jugs, fill them with water and put in there. And that's kind of cool too, because then you have a backup. So if you do lose power, those will help generate more cold to keep it colder. That's cool too. And a handy safety thing, like my fridge outside, this one I have an alarm on, and it's battery operated, so it doesn't matter if there's power at all. I would take you outside to show you my other freezer, which I've shown you before, but Brian's mowing. But one thing too is that you can take a bottle, like a water bottle half full, lay it on its side or stand it up, whatever, but freeze it that way, and then turn it the other way. Like if you lay it on the side, once it's frozen, turn it straight up. And if you've had a power outage, or you come home from vacation and you see that the water, instead of being sideways in the bottle, you set it up and now all of a sudden it's down frozen this way, you'll know that your freezer thawed out and refroze. That's important, because once your food has thawed out and gotten to room temperature and all the safety things on that, refreezing it just to recook it is not going to get rid of what's going to make you sick. So it's a good thing to have the backup plan. So I have my freezer alarm on the inside freezer, and I have water. I actually have a couple of those water bottles in my outside freezer. And so that's it. I hope this information about freezers. Oh, we got to go look at my pantry too. But the freezer kind of situation helps out a lot. Okay, here we are at my pantry. Now this is my pantry, and it could be other people's cupboards and things like that. So what I have in here, let me tilt you down a little bit. You know all my mixes that I make? This is where I keep them. Got peanut butter, because that's what we grabbed. So these are the extra soups that I just made the video on, the condensed soups. There they are. My SOS mix. And up here is all the things for my bread making. So, you know, I use it for other stuff too. But I have all the things that I would use for bread making. Wheat germ. I've got my vital wheat gluten. I've got my potato flakes. All those things are here. And down here are my mixes. I keep my mix cookbooks up here with the recipes so that they're right together. And then I have other things here, like I've got some gnocchi that I need to use, you know, things like that, that I can look in here and go, oh, I'm going to make soup. I'll throw that in with it. So it's not like super long-term storage, but this is what I just call my working things, like this here. So things like this is my ground beef helper. I've got my master cake mix. This will make a cake. I've got, what else is in there? Oh, my master muffin mix. And so I can just open this. I could grab one of these books, grab my mix, and make something out of it. And I just love that. These are my white sauce mix. Gotta have peanut butter, right? But this is what I have in my pantry. Now, if you just have a shelf, like a cupboard, I've been to apartments that only have like 3 or 4 cupboards. You could put these mixes in a bin maybe and slide them under your bed. So there's different places that you can store the things that you're going to use, but having kind of an idea of what's in there and having it organized, like I know these are my mixes, I know this is my bread making stuff, I know down here is a little bin that I have things like that, gnocchi and the pasta. The other shelf is I have like my plastic wrap and aluminum foil, my Ziploc bags, those are all down there. And then the bottom shelf has all the things like all my different vinegars and stuff. But this is just my pantry. So I don't have food in my other cupboards. I have all my dishes and my bakeware and things like that. So I keep this here. And then of course the typical stuff in the fridge and the refrigerator freezer. But I have the cutest little freezer to show you. Check this out. Okay, I think this is adorable. I got a bunch of stuff on it because I'm going to be making a bunch of cooking videos today. So there's a bunch of stuff right here above it on the counter and stuff. But this is adorable. I've seen the little ones that are like a chest freezer. But you know what I was saying about the refrigerator freezer, it's not for long term. And I just like freezers. I don't know. I got a thing about freezers. But this is like a little mini freezer. And the thing that's cool about it, it's counter height. So when we redo the kitchen, it's sitting in front of a counter, like a thing under here, which is basically just where I store a bunch of cups and tumblers and junk, which I could get rid of. So my goal is when we redo it, this is actually going to go back in underneath the kitchen counter. So I have like a little mini freezer in my kitchen, and it's great. It's just got these couple little shelves. It's got a little basket down here, and I just love it. So up here is all my frozen fruit and stuff for smoothies. Here's some things I need to use. I've got some shrimp, quick things like I got these Hot Pockets. I don't know why, because I make my own most of the time. But things like that are just in here up in the kitchen, so I can grab that. So I have this cute, adorable little freezer, and you can see, you can find these. Just look at. I think this one is a 3 cubic foot freezer. So I've got the 3 cubic foot door freezer. You can get a 3 cubic foot chest freezer also. But I like this just for handy things like my frozen fruits and things. Okay, so I hope that helped you guys like to visualize what happens. How does your pantry change? How can your pantry change based on your situation? Maybe you're cooking a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to use pretty quickly. You'll put that in the freezer. Things that you buy in bulk that you can, you'll put that in your pantry. You get your pantry too built up, you can start using other things and using those canned good foods in different ways. And some people prefer some foods canned, and like my ugly chicken. I love it. And my own ketchup and my own salsa. So those things I will always can. But there's other things that work better in a freezer, like the chopped onions, which let me show you. Hang on. So see here, I just did 4 onions and I chopped them and I just laid them on a cookie sheet on a piece of parchment and I froze them. Why is this awesome? Because you can't can chopped onions. And if you do, it's not like chopped fresh onions. So there's reasons to use a freezer. I don't like canned ground beef. I don't like the texture. It's a texture thing for me. It's not a flavor thing. It's a texture thing. But frozen ground beef, it's fine. I have sourdough starter. You know, you can freeze that. You can't can it. So I will actually put that in little 1 cup increments and I'll freeze the sourdough starter. I learned that in my sourdough adventures. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do with your different types of food storage. And right now I'm trying to use more of my pantry, my long-term storage and my canned goods, and I'm doing things that are more short-term in my freezer. So that's that. And I hope this gives you a little bit of information, a little bit of thought process, that you don't have individual things in your pantry. You have a whole big thing with 4 sections to your pantry. So pantries are cool, especially when you're building all the parts of them. So anyway, I hope you guys got some good information from this video. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.